Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French, and we kick off the week where we left off Friday talking about what else but impeachment. Tonight, we hear from a moderate Republican and get his take on how his party is behaving during this impeachment saga. Then former Watergate prosecutor joins us to take a look at the case against President Trump. And he says Trump's obstruction and lack of cooperation surpasses what he saw during the Nixon years. Also, new reaction to the Inspector General report on the Russia probe that's getting quite a bit of attention. More big names in the intel community. They're calling out not only Trump and William Barr, but also going after some of the practices at the FBI. They're saying, though, that the lack of trust and belief in our institutions isn't just dangerous, it's also disturbing. But first, let's get going here with the latest on the impeachment headlines and a reset of where things stand as we begin what could be a historic week. And for that, let's bring in senior political correspondent Andrew Whitman.
Well, Rich, today's biggest developments are happening behind closed doors as the House does head counts ahead of this week's impeachment vote, while negotiations have begun in the Senate for the likely trial there. And the top Democrat in the Senate says calling more witnesses is essential.
We need to know the facts from those who are in a position to know, and from documents that accurately reflect them. To engage a trial without the facts coming out is to engage in a cover-up.
Those comments coming as we enter the busiest week of the impeachment process thus far. Here's what to expect going forward. Tomorrow, the House Rules Committee will meet to set up the rules for the House impeachment vote, like how much time will each party get, will amendments be allowed, how long will the whole process take? Most of those questions should be answered tomorrow. The following day, Wednesday, the full House debates and is expected to vote on the 2 articles of impeachment. If 218 members vote yes, Donald Trump will become the 3rd American president ever impeached. After that, while the rest of the nation is home for the holidays, House Democrats will name their impeachment managers, the people who act as prosecutors during a Senate trial, and Senate leaders will negotiate over the rules for the trial, including the length of the trial and the witnesses to be called. Now, all signs point to that trial beginning in the Senate on Monday, January 6th. Chief Justice John Roberts would be sworn in to preside over the trial, which would run 6 days a week until it's concluded. Senators can ask questions of witnesses, but only in writing. Deliberations will be done in private, but the final vote will be public. It takes a 2/3 vote in the Senate to remove the president. Anything less and he is acquitted and stays in office. If the president is removed, a majority vote would then bar him from holding elective office ever again. Now, still no reason to think that impeachment won't pass the House with a smattering of defecting Democrats. And there's still no reason to think that Trump will be convicted and removed in the Senate, in part because the numbers just haven't moved that much recently. A new Fox News poll shows 54% of Americans support impeachment. Half of Americans think the president should be impeached and removed. Those are numbers holding almost entirely steady since October. 538's analysis of impeachment polling shows the margin even closer, but also shows support for impeachment, though the numbers opposing impeachment are higher now than they were or have been since the Ukraine story first broke. One more poll to share with you that speaks to the increase in partisanship over the last generation and a half. The NBC News Wall Street Journal poll is turning 30 years old this week, and they did a comparison of approval numbers between President Trump and the Republican in office 30 years ago, George H.W. Bush. Bush was better liked overall, but their numbers among Republicans, the second line, they're remarkably similar. The big difference, approval of a Republican president among Democratic voters. Some people saying that's because of today's current partisanship. That 30-year window also included the impeachment of another president, Bill Clinton, who was impeached in December 1998 and acquitted by the Senate in February of 99. 5 Republican House members voted against impeaching Clinton on all counts. One of them is our guest on RFL tonight, former Connecticut Congressman Chris Shays. Though critical of President Clinton in '98 and convinced he was not always truthful as president, Shays was initially against impeachment, then announced he was undecided, so he held a widely attended and televised town hall meeting to hear how his constituents felt. Even reportedly, legendary actor and Connecticut resident Paul Newman could not get into the room. That's how busy it was. Voters in Shays' district that night were divided.
How many people in this room are here because they believe the President of the United States should be impeached? Raise your hand. How many people are in this room because they believe the President of the United States should be impeached? And raise your hand. Okay, look around. It's I think less than half right now. How many people believe the President should not be impeached?
Like we said, a pretty divided room. 4 days after that town hall and after a meeting with President Clinton, Congressman Shays voted against all 4 impeachment counts. His vote, contrary to the wishes of his party, though, did not hurt him politically. Shays was reelected in 2000 by a 17-point margin and left Congress only after losing in the Democratic wave election of 2008. Rich?
All right, Andrew, thank you. Joining us now, Dominic Carter, political journalist and author, and the guy that we talk about like an object in a room, former Congressman Chris Shays. Look at you with the very distinguished beard. Yes. Take us back. You were in one of what's turning out to be vanishing realities, which is a divided district, if you will, here. Yeah. One of those areas that is seemingly reflective of what we used to look more like. To that end, how did you make your mind up?
Well, first let me just say, there were less than half for impeachment and less than half against impeachment, and then there were some decided. But there were equally numbers of for and against. Yep. And I have to tell you, it's one of the most memorable moments of my life. It lasted 8 hours. 5,000 people tried to get in. It was filled by 6 o'clock. At 7, we started. We didn't end until after 2:30 at night. And the reason
you didn't even let Blue Eyes in here. Paul Newman couldn't even get in the door.
But this is a great story. My wife went to him and said, you know, Mr. Newman,
You're already in trouble at that point, but go ahead.
I'd be happy to let you have my seat. He said that wouldn't be right or fair. And he was about to leave, and one of my staff said, Mr. Newman, would you encourage people to sign in who can't get in? 5,000 people tried to come. A lot got out of their cars to come in, and that was an estimate by the police and so on. And he stayed for about a half hour encouraging people to sign. Now, years later, I'd have someone say, my mom tried to get in, or my dad tried to get in, or my mom tried to get in. I said, was she angry? No, she got to meet Paul Newman. Now, so I believed ultimately that the impeachable offenses weren't proven, and the proven offenses weren't impeachable. And I felt that if it was about a president lying, we would have impeachment every 4 years.
When you made your decision, how much of it was to try and reflect your electorate? How much of it was you were considering the arc of history and the consequences of what you were doing, or just isolated to the facts and the issue at hand?
The history and the facts. And you need to know, I think, that controversy is the enemy of the incumbent. Congressmen, as a general, don't like controversy because you make some people happy, you make some people sad. So I knew in this case I would disappoint a lot of people no matter what I did.
So in next segment, we're going to talk about more of the party politics of this. But I just saw before we sat down, Tom Ridge, former governor of Pennsylvania, former member of the Bush administration. He said, extremely troubled by what he saw of the president, and it's not something he can live with. Christy Todd Whitman, former governor of New Jersey, has been a guest in this program. I believe it's impeachable offenses that he's done.
Yeah.
My point is, I see former high-ranking and high-profile Republicans talking out about the unacceptability of what the president did, and that it was not remotely in keeping with how the founding fathers intended a president to act, and that it was a high crime and a misdemeanor in their vantage point. My point is, I've been surprised by the unanimity, at least in the House, of Republicans on this. Not even ones that were willing to say, with the exception of one, and then he announced he was resigning 2 weeks later from Florida, that I don't know if this is impeachable, but it was wrong what he did. I would have bet, Chris, that would have been the answer that a lot would have said when they got the question. Instead, it's been a blind fealty to the president.
Yeah, and the reason is, sadly, the president can kill, he can't create. And by this I mean any Republican that opposes him, it's very possible he can defeat them in a Republican primary if it's a strong Republican district. And so Mark Sanford is a great example. He was up for re-election last time. He gently criticized the president about something. The president jumped right in, supported his primary opponent. His primary opponent won, and then the primary Republican, he was defeated, and then she lost the general election. And he did that on purpose. He wanted every other Republican to say, "This is what happened to Mark Sanford. This is what will happen to you."
Now, when you were in D.C., you were famous for traveling around the world to some of the hot spots.
Right.
And obviously took great concern, not just with our military, but also our footprint in the world and our role in the world. Yes, some are disputing the facts. I think disingenuously, we know what the president attempted to do.
Okay.
Come on, right? So my point is, I'm putting you back in Congress right now.
If I was there,
withholding aid to a vulnerable ally after the day after the Mueller testified. I mean, do we really have to divine the intentions and the meaning of what he was doing?
yeah, let me just tell you, and my wife doesn't like if I was there, I would vote against impeachment.
Why?
Because I think the impeachable offenses, again, aren't proven, and the proven offenses aren't impeachable. And this is what I think. I think you can't overturn a general election of the American people unless you have the smoking gun in front of you and the dead body on the ground.
This is what I don't get, okay? How much more of a smoking gun? Now, if somebody turned around and said to me, Rich, it was really bad what he did, but I want to kick him out of office, I may not agree with him, but I'd understand.
I would censure him.
To me, he clearly used his office in an attempt to get dirt, and he used our tax dollars that you guys in Congress, I'm talking about you guys in the present tense, appropriated. And he did that for his own personal benefit. And the founding fathers, Chris, said, you can't do that. That's an example of a high crime and a misdemeanor. What more do we need?
Okay, this is what I think. I think most people who are going to vote for impeachment are doing it not because of the 2 articles, because of all the other things that make you believe, and I kind of believe you're right, that he did those things. He attempted to do it. He didn't succeed. After the whistleblower came forward, yes, that's when he released the money. But you don't know for certain, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that he wouldn't have released the money anyway. You just don't know.
That covers the first article of impeachment. The second one, you said there's no smoking gun. The second one, there is a smoking gun. The utter and complete obstruction of Congress's ability to do oversight on this president and withholding documents and witnesses. You wouldn't even vote on the obstruction of Congress? Do you think he is obstructing Congress?
I think he is, but again, I think you can have disputes between what a president has to do and what he has to release versus what Congress wants. And that's a dispute that's not resolved.
You wouldn't even vote yes on obstruction?
No, but I would vote to censure him for my belief that he did a number of things. I would even censure him for how he brutalized the ambassador in Ukraine for totally partisan political reasons. There are 100 reasons why I would censure him.
And we're going to pick this conversation up right
Please
after this quick
continue,
break.
there's
We
another
will,
point.
definitely. We're going to talk more on the politics of impeachment on the other side of the break. Now, again, it's a lot of very curious folks here taking curious positions today versus ones that they did a generation ago. Not just Republicans, by the way, Democrats too. Republicans supporting this president with blind loyalty, slammed by a Democrat on the Judiciary Committee. After the break, we'll show you what we're talking about. Stay with us.